Armed conflict is probably the greatest human failing. We continue to fail successively across the globe. The tragedy that has been Colombia has been bright in my mind, and the outrageous act of setting poetry against armed conflict is an astonishing act of bravery, and it's worked for 23 years to galvanise a community with the notions of a richer, peaceable life. A cranky call from the water hen to planes overhead, then I'm back amongst gesticulated argument, still based in the caves. We need more, they want ours, greed and fear again. Willows trawl the lake, eels archive the histories of mud. Time to replace the tribal gods. They've started and won every war. The peoples of the book should throw those books away. There comes a time when blood outweighs the ink. So let me be lazy. I have painted all the pretty specks, done the overstand, then the understand without illuminates or audience. My father is dead. Let wet cold tortoises mine the flint, we'll sing our hymns to fish. A seagull is whisking a cloud in the shallows. Your sleep is disturbed, your lunch. What surrounds us is not serene. Crows are singing, little lamb. Each weed is a contest, but it's the violence of a blinking eye, hum of the skin, so let me be lazy. Chain each man of power to weathered wooden benches until the infusion of bird call overwhelms their hands. Immobilized eyelids will surrender to a day of casual forage. You know, it's simplistic to say, simplistic to deny. We need peacekeepers to patrol our heads. With lazy as our prayer, train ourselves to say enough. Intelligence will listen as each day becomes its own statement of intent. Gracias. Don Quixote. Don Quixote, we have no choice but to try. Poetry is what I do. Poetry is what these marvelous assembly of writers from around the globe have come here. It's what we all do. And it's not the perfect answer, but it's what little we can do to affect the world. And I have seen personally where poetry can affect a human being, change their lives. Can it change a people? Can it change the dynamics of a conflict? Maybe, maybe not. But there was a famous quote from a general once when he was addressing his men. He stood up and said, "Men, the situation is hopeless. We must therefore redouble our efforts." The League of Lovely Women.
think their shields are mirrors. I love their fierce white teeth. My women roar. Face paint shatters on a belly laugh. They plot with a potted glare, then march on down the stair without wobble, wand or weave. Cloaked in the black cloth of fire and desks, one pride. Strange, strange partners, they adopt their wounds. No wife, maid, no nun or mum is tamed. The neck sometimes submits while the brain punches back. We strutting sons stomp blithely on a perilous parquet. There's more, you say, and you'd be right. Hold them to your ear and hear the gibber of the waves. As crazy as men, contentment is suborned intent. They're everywhere, like headlights, randomly illuminate as they move, and sometimes choose to shine on you.
Poetry is a beautiful dance. Sometimes it can be absolutely clear and everybody can understand it and pick it up. Other poems are denser, they need time. You'll have it come across your ears once, but then you need to read it twice or a third time, and then you find the inner depth and beauty, the prisms within that poem, and that's a treasure that we can all share. I can certainly share it. I've loved reading the other poets' work here, particularly from Latin and South America, because it's a more robust poetry, it's a richer poetry, it's a denser poetry than what's happening in much of the West. I grew up in outer suburbs of Sydney. There are only 3 books in our house, so I didn't have a lot to grow from, but I was experimenting with words. As a child, I suppose I used words to get myself into and out of trouble regularly. Aeolus at the Mulga. The desert wind wears a blunt dust. Cantankerous yap lifts sheet metal from the depths of snub-nosed Silverton buses, all cut like raw opal, pressed into a humiliating servitude windbreaks for camels. Punctuation of crows affixed on air. The land is your lungs, but flies have retired as the gale wails. Ants flummoxed by a vertebrae of quartz, red-veined beneath this lee, my eyes are lost. The wind is a tide, only bones bask on gasping sand. That rue spine sits prissy 90 degrees against the perimeters of stone. Go deep, don't assume, refrain. A huff of emus disperse like seeds as I approach. This is a vacated day. Feet crash on paper. We have built much, the skipsy jeans that jitter past our hands. Falter. This adamant shuts the mouth, comes over, spits. That coming shine we smelt from rocks, death by a purpose still, destiny to bend, the nuisance of new sense. Only dry scat is left on 100-kilometre mat. Concession is a prayer, excoriation. We make brushes. God could be a wind, and heaven is a spot safely away from his hands. Gracias. Colombians have to understand that this is the world's biggest poetry festival. the logistics, the research, the translation, it's mind-boggling, and it's done with such style, such relaxed elegance, that I'm breathless, and I know other Australians who've been here in previous years tell exactly the same story. The festival is a marvel. It's a treasure for your nation, and it has to be preserved.